Hello guys, how are you all? Welcome back to my channel. So, today we are gonna see, what if Isuku can steal villain's power and got Harem, part 2. So before we start, go check out the author of this fanfic, Mr. Chubby Snorlax 619, link is in the description. Also subscribe to our channel and like this video. So let's begin the video. Home. Isuku looked up to see his apartment complex a block away. He could use enhanced jumping to get there quicker. But he was too injured and didn't want to draw attention. With a sigh, Isuku began to walk home. He knew it was a bad idea since that would be the first place the police and heroes would check. But he needed to see his mom now that his mind was clear. To explain and apologize. For everything. As Isuku continued to make his way home. Something shocking happened. Deku. Isuku froze in place. He dared not move or even breathe for the longest time. With a deep sigh and sad frown he turned around to where the voice came from. There, a couple of feet from him, stood his former best friend and now the main bully standing there. His face and eyes filled with rage. Kaken. Both former friends stood there, staring at each other. Katsuki glaring at the wounded Isuku with all his anger. While our young vigilante hero stood there with a somber expression. Isuku never thought this would happen. Not in a million years. Maybe in his nightmares, but not now. What are you doing here, Kaken? Isuku asked softly in a serious tone. This caused Katsuki to growl and clench his fists in anger. He wanted nothing more than to walk over there and beat Deku until he was an inch from death. But he needed answers. What the fuck? How did a shitty nerd like you get a quirk? How did you get a shit ton of quirks? Katsuki yelled out trying to contain his anger, but failing. And why the hell are you a fucking vigilante? This is all bullshit. Whatever tricks you have to convince those dumbasses won't work on me, Deku. Isuku just stood there, still holding on to his injury. The burn he got from that fight. He could feel himself getting weaker. Eventually Isuku sighed as he looked up at Katsuki. I don't have to explain anything to you. Isuku started coolly as he turned around to walk away. Shocking Katsuki. Go home, Kaken, before you get hurt. As Isuku walked away, heading towards home. Katsuki stood stunned, then that quickly turned into a seething rage. How could such a worthless nerd like Deku dare say that to him? What gave him the right? His quirkless ass needed to be taught a lesson. From making his mom worry about him and tricking those shitheads for believing he actually had a quirk. The ash blonde hothead's hand began to smoke and burn a little. Don't you dare turn your back on me, Deku, Katsuki yelled out as he had enough. And charged at Isuku with his right arm and hand raised. Eat shit and die. As the explosive quirk user got closer and closer, Isuku sighed. He wasn't in the mood for this. Isuku turned around and raised his free arm and hand. He readied himself as Katsuki got closer. And when he was a mere feet away, Isuku let him have it. He used his sound emission quirk. Soundwave Blitz, Isuku yelled out as he shot a shockwave of sound at Kaken. But didn't have time to dodge because he was stunned. Isuku did have a quirk. So, Katsuki was hit by the shockwave of sound. It was so big and powerful that windows began to break from the buildings behind Katsuki. He was powerless as he had to shut his ears and fall down to one knee. Katsuki yelled out as Isuku kept on firing his sound emission. Isuku suddenly began to walk towards Katsuki, who remained helpless. Which pissed him off to no end. As Isuku walked towards Katsuki, the shockwave of sound only got stronger. When he did arrive, Isuku stopped using sound emission and quickly activated another quirk before Katsuki could recover and attack. Izuku's free arm quickly turned into metal. And before Katsuki knew it, he was backhanded by Isuku into a building's outer wall. Katsuki yelled out in pain as he fell to hard ground. While nothing broke, it still hurt like hell. Isuku gave a regretful and sympathetic look at Katsuki, who began to get up. His pained expression filled with rage. Go home, Kaken, I don't want to hurt you. Isuku said, dropping his sympathetic look. People most definitely heard that. I don't have time to mess around with you. I need to see my mom before the police or pro heroes come. This made Katsuki growl more. He clenched his teeth as he shook off the pain. So you do have a quirk. More than one, Katsuki roughly said with a deep scowl. Don't you dare look down upon me because of that, you shithead. I don't care how many quirks you have. Or even if you are the fucking stalker. You could be the boogeyman for all I care. I'll still kill your worthless ass. Isuku was beginning to grow impatient. He didn't need to hear this. It was always the same with Kaken. All the yelling and cursing. He was tired of it. I'm telling you one last time to go home, Bakugo. Isuku started dropping his former friend's childhood name. Making him flinch a little. I may be hurt, but I'm not the same Deku. Go home. Katsuki's scowl remained as sparks began to ignite from his hands. He couldn't believe it, Deku of all people was threatening him. This was a joke. That attack and backhand he got was a fucking joke. Deku was nothing but a fucking joke. So, what have you been doing? Hunting lowlife assholes and fighting heroes. Making your mom worry for your worthless ass. Katsuki yelled out, letting all his rage out. He then pointed a finger at Isuku. All that talk of you wanting to be a hero. That was all bullshit. And you being quirkless, that's a bullshit lie you've been telling me. You've been making look like a fucking fool. Deku. The tension in the air was thick, it almost felt heavy to breath. Katsuki just stood there glaring at Isuku. Waiting for an answer or something. Isuku stood there, his head lowered, hiding his expression. He then looks up at Katsuki smiling. Suddenly after that he started to laugh. Angering and confusing Katsuki. Isuku laughed out like a maniac. He kept that up for a good minute before calming down and sighing. He then looked at Katsuki with a dark look. You really are a fool if you think that's true. Katsuki backed up a bit, stunned to see this kind of side to Deku. But more angry that he insulted him. Look at you, just because you have a flashy and powerful quirk. You automatically think you're God. Guess what, you're not. Isuku yelled out in a very uncharacteristic tone. There are more powerful people out there than the two of us. Who could move mountains, raise storms, destroy cities, and kill hundreds in a blink of an eye. And all you can do is cause a tantrum and blow stuff up with your sweat. Your sweat. Katsuki clenched his teeth and fists as he let all of Izuku's words process in his head. It pissed him off beyond all belief to be talked down to. And by Deku of all people. You know what is between the two of us? I think I'm stronger than you. That immediately made Katsuki eyes widen in shock before seething back in a rage. More rage than he's ever felt before. What the hell did Deku just say? My main quirk has always been for me to understand how anything works, especially people and their quirks. And for the last few months, I've figured out what makes you tick Kaken. I know all your strengths and of course weaknesses. And don't forget I have more than one quirk under my command. Isuku summoned a green flame that engulfed his free hand. I have a total of 13 quirks that I've required, 3 of which could easily kill you. If I wanted to. You're strong Kaken, but you are not stronger than me. Well, you've been doing a bit of training. You haven't reached your full limit. I, on the other hand, have been fighting and hunting thugs for months. I have experience and power on my side. And to be perfectly honest, I haven't even reached my full limit. While most would think Isuku was being arrogant, he wasn't. Months of fighting and hunting had helped him get stronger both physically and mentally. Hell, he could handle 3 pro heroes at once. But to be fair, he was at 100% when that happened. Now, he could barely stand. Overusing his pacify quirk and fighting those prisoners wasn't easy. He had the wounds to prove it. He doubted he could take on Kaken and win. But he wouldn't know if he didn't try. Katsuki on the other hand was completely livid. Oh yeah? Katsuki asked awfully calm while still glaring at Isuku. How about we test that theory of yours, Isuku? Isuku shook his head, either in disappointment or anger. He then looked up to Katsuki with a dead serious expression. I don't think you want to find that out. Even though I'm injured and a bit tired, I can still take you down. Isuku explained, still getting glared at by Katsuki, who was about to lose it. Go home or else. Enough, Katsuki screamed out. Little explosions and flames shot out from his hands. You think you're hot shit just because you got a few shitty quirks, just because you took down some no-named assholes and some pro heroes? Well, you're not. You're just a pebble in my path. A worthless fucking pebble. You hear me? Isuku sighed as he slowly began to smile in a cocky way. Throwing a tantrum, as always. You don't deserve the quirk. It's like giving a spoiled child a flamethrower. Go home, I ain't repeating myself again. Isuku warned as he moved his other hand from his burn injury. I don't want to hurt you any more than I have to. Instead of yelling or threatening Isuku, Katsuki just smiled in a very dark way. He then got into a fighting stance. You call that hurting me? You hit like a whiny bitch. Yes, you know all about that, Kaken. Ha. Looks like you do have a pair after all. Isuku then got into his fighting stance. This was it. A fated battle between former friends. A long time ago, they were the best of friends. But now, it looks like they were bitter enemies. You know this is going to end one way, right? Yeah. With you on the fucking ground. That made Isuku smile and chuckle a little. Promises, promises. And with that, Isuku lifted up both hands and fired his sound emission. But just before he fired, Katsuki anticipated this. With a mighty yell, the explosion user jumped and fired a powerful explosion from his right hand, helping him dodge Izuku's attack. Then with an animalistic grin he rushed at Isuku. Katsuki yelled out as he got closer and closer to Isuku, who barely had enough time to stop his quirk to activate another one. Isuku quickly activated his Iron Make quirk to make a crude but huge metal shield formed from his arm. When Katsuki made it, he attacked Isuku with a strong explosion. The explosion was so powerful that it sent Isuku flying in the air. Thankfully before he hit the ground, he deactivated Iron Make and activated his pyrokinesis to summon a huge burst of green flames from his hands, which launched him in the air and sent him flying towards Katsuki, who looked very annoyed. "Take this," Isuku yelled out as he stopped using pyrokinesis and activated his haze quirk, blowing out black haze from his mouth as he was flying straight at Kaken. Katsuki didn't know what that black mist was, but he knew he shouldn't breathe it. With a deep breath he raised his hands and used his quirk again. He fired 2 explosions that sent some of the haze away and sent Isuku flying again with a painful grunt. Thankfully before he hit the ground this time around, Isuku used his stone mimicry to soften his landing, which it did. With a loud crash Isuku landed, making Katsuki smile. But that smile went away when he saw Isuku in his stone form. "Gonna take a lot more than fireworks to take me out, Kaken," Isuku yelled out with a grunt. He was of course bluffing because using his stone mimicry right now was very taxing. Especially with his wounds. "Thought you said you were gonna put me on the ground." Katsuki growled in response as he was getting more and more pissed off. Not wanting to give Katsuki time to attack again, Isuku rushed with all his might at Katsuki, who looked ready. While not the fastest in this form, Isuku was tougher and stronger. He just hoped this form could handle a head-on explosion to the face. Just as Isuku was a few feet away, Katsuki raised his right hand, getting ready for a right hook. Something Isuku saw coming. "Predictable," Isuku yelled out as he quickly grabbed Katsuki's right arm. And with a yell he performed a powerful judo throw, sending Katsuki over him and throwing him hard on the ground. Right hook, as always. All Katsuki could do was yell out in pain as he hit the asphalt of the deserted street. Isuku wasn't done there however. The stone-skinned vigilante grabbed Katsuki by the hair and threw him across the street, making him hit the ground hard again. "Go home, Kaken," Isuku yelled out, punching his fists together. "I could have punched a hole right through you when you were down." Katsuki slowly began to get up. His expression was that of anger and pain. But he was focusing more on anger now, not wanting to give up or listen to Deku. The hot head of a blonde charged at Isuku again with his arm raised, making Isuku sigh again. Isuku got on the defensive expecting Katsuki to go straight at him. But he did something completely unexpected. He smiled and used his quirk directly under him, launching himself in air. And before Isuku knew it, Katsuki was in the air over him. "Die!" Katsuki yelled out as he fired off 2 explosions while in the air that sent Isuku to the ground. The heat and flames he could handle, it was the force that he was having trouble with. Katsuki landed safely and afterwards rushed at Isuku again. This time using an explosion that sends him skidding across the asphalt. Katsuki was smiling as he looked at Isuku, still in his stone form, trying to get up. "Where's all that shit talking now, Deku?" Katsuki asked very proudly and aggressively. "Look at you. Even with all your shitty quirks, you're still getting your ass kicked." Well, Isuku didn't want to admit it. Kaken was right. He looked all over his body to see cracks, which meant any more punishment he got would be risking something to break off. Normally this wouldn't be the case, but he's injured and has been overusing his quirks. He was fighting on borrowed time. But Kaken didn't know that. Isuku finally got up and stood there deep in thought. Our young hero was running out of options. He could end this fight here and now, but all of his counterattacks involved deadly force. Well, he admitted Kaken was an ass. He still saw him as a friend. Or at least did. Eventually Isuku realized something. He did have another quirk that could counter Kaken, though it was very risky, since he's really never had to use this quirk before. However, it looked like he had no choice. Isuku sighed as he deactivated his stone mimicry quirk. He looked at Kaken, who glared right back at him. The green-haired vigilante looked down at his wounds, specifically his burn mark. "Looks like this is it," Isuku thought bitterly with a frown. He then smiled as he began to take off his burned and ripped up coat, then his ruined shirt, confusing Katsuki. "Darn, I really like that coat too." Katsuki's eyes widened in shock at what he saw. All over Izuku's body were cuts, bruises, and a massive burn mark on his side. That wasn't all. Katsuki saw old scars and other past injuries all over his body. And that was only on the front. Isuku noticed Katsuki's look and decided to explain. "Not pretty, Kaken. A few of these I got from you and your friends, though those I could handle. The rest are from the lowlifes and others I've fought and hunted over the months. Most are from their quirks, a few though are from other things. Knives, bats, shivs, pipes, and even a gun once. This burn mark and cuts I got all are from the police station I escaped from. Well, your explosions hurt, they tickle compared to what I've been through." Katsuki's shock quickly turned to anger. Even when he had him on the ropes, Deku was still acting like tough shit. "I'm tired of this. I'm going to fucking kill you," Katsuki screamed out in anger. "You hear me, Deku? I don't give a shit about your sob story. I'm going to end this. And prove you're nothing but a worthless piece of shit." Most would be unnerved or even mad about Katsuki raving around. But Izuku smiled and laughed, only making Katsuki angrier. "Come on then, Kaken. I might actually feel something this time." And that was it. Katsuki yelled out in anger and charged at Izuku one last time. Not bothering to come up with a strategy. Katsuki only wanted one thing. Izuku on the ground. Just as Katsuki was about to unleash his most powerful explosion he mustered. Izuku smirked as he quickly got down and placed his hands on the ground. Then just as Katsuki attacked, Izuku activated his quirk. Die. Boom. The resulting explosion caused the street and any if not all nearby buildings to shake. The windows that weren't already broken broke from the shockwave of the explosion. The flames and smoke could be seen from a mile or two. Heroes and police in the area looked up in shock. Then all quickly mobilized and headed to the scene as fast as they could. For one woman in a small apartment who's been crying and trying to contact the police. She was shocked and scared to see such a large explosion so close to her home. As she looked out she knew those explosions from anywhere. And deep down she felt something. Or better yet someone. Izuku. Meanwhile back at the battle. Katsuki was panting. That attack was the most powerful and taxing one he's ever made. So powerful that his muscles and fingers were tensing up badly. Soon he smirked. There was no way Deku could have survived that attack. Unfortunately, as the dust and smoke began to settle, Katsuki was stunned by what he saw. Izuku was alive and was completely untouched by the attack. His hands and whole body looked red hot. Katsuki also swore he heard sizzling of some kind too. Almost like a stove. The ground below him looked to be completely decimated. All the asphalt was gone, only the dirt that laid before was all that was left. Izuku was breathing heavily and had a strained expression. He then smiled as he got up slowly. As his hands left the ground, his body began to slowly cool down. "You know that might have actually killed me," Izuku calmly stated in a fake shocked tone. His body looked to be cooling off, the sizzling red was all gone. He looked at Katsuki who still couldn't believe what he was seeing. "Lucky I'm not a one-trick pony, Kaken. Also it's my turn." Before Katsuki could react, Izuku's right hand turned into metal. Then with all the strength his weakened body could muster, Izuku performed a mighty uppercut, sending Katsuki flying and seemingly knocking him out. Katsuki hit the ground hard and this time he wasn't getting up. The surprise attack mixed with Izuku giving it his all in that punch seemed to have helped a lot. Izuku couldn't believe it. He beat his former best friend and main bully. While anyone would be celebrating, Izuku wasn't. Because how he won wasn't noble at all. He used trickery and multiple quirks that weren't really his to beat Kaken. That surprising punch didn't help either, especially since he used his Iron Make quirk with it. Izuku looked ready to fall over. But somehow, he was still standing. His expression was that of regret as he looked over at Kaken's unconscious body. He then sighed. Well, they weren't friends anymore. It still hurt him on the inside to fight his former best friend. "Forgive me, Kaken, but I doubt you ever will. I didn't mean for this to happen. But you left me no choice." Izuku began to slowly walk towards his home, eventually passing Katsuki's knocked out body. When passing he gave him a sympathetic glance before resuming his walk. "If this is the last time we meet, I'm glad we talked. At least for a little while. Goodbye, Kaken." As Izuku kept on walking he suddenly stopped. The reason? He wasn't alone. Before Izuku could activate any of his quirks, a dozen fiber-like threads quickly wrapped themselves around him. Very tightly and immobilizing him. Izuku didn't bother to struggle because he knew it would be pointless. He knew who was doing this. "Never thought you were in this city of all places. Are you passing through or did they bring out all the big guns for me?" Izuku asked very calmly before turning his head around to see who captured him. Tsunagu Hakamoto Aka Blue Genist, number 4 pro hero in Japan. Quirk, Fiber Master. Never thought I'd see you around here. What can I say, when I heard the infamous stalker had escaped as I was passing through, I couldn't help but see what all the fuss was about. Blue Genist coolly said in a well-spoken yet serious tone. His shirt sleeves seemed to be all cut up but were in fact turned into threads that were restraining Izuku. To be frank, I'm underwhelmed. I was expecting someone older. This caused Izuku to sign with a depressed face. I get that a lot. Izuku started with a deflated tone. That's when he noticed they weren't alone. Wow, I can't believe they sent this many people after me. Izuku looked around to see many pro heroes converging on him and Blue Genist. He saw the likes of Death Arms, Native, Backdraft, Midnight, and a bandaged up and tired Eraserhead. all of them are major heroes. Even if he was a 100%, Isuku knew he couldn't beat them all. Let alone escape from them. You know, if this wasn't such a serious situation, I'd probably be geeking out and asking for all your autographs. Isuku somewhat jokingly said, giving a weak smile. That smile turned into a frown. Unfortunately, it looks like that isn't going to happen. Before anyone knew it, Isuku activated his Iron Make Quirk and summoned a multitude of metal sharp spikes from all over his upper body, which cut and weakened the threads restraining him. With a yell, he broke out for his restraints. He then got into a fighting stance, but not before turning both of his arms into metal. All the heroes save for Blue Genist and Aizawa got on the defensive, ready for Isuku to attack, but stopped when they saw the condition he was in. He had cuts, bruises, minor burn marks, and a real major one. Some couldn't help but cringe or feel sympathetic when they saw all his past injuries. This kid looked like a battle-worn veteran. I'm not going anywhere until I see my mom. Isuku yelled out, ready to fight his way out of here. Even though that was impossible. He still wasn't ready to go down, even though his body was failing on him. I'll take you all on. Blue Genist and Aizawa knew they didn't need to fight or restrain Isuku. His body was already failing on him. It was only a matter of time before he would topple over. And the other heroes were beginning to realize that too. Come on kid, give up and come with us. Death Arm said calmly to Isuku. You're seriously hurt. Let us help you. Fuck off. Isuku yelled out aggressively as he stopped using his Iron Make Quirk and immediately activated his Molten Hands Quirk. That got everyone on the defensive again. I'm not going anywhere. Suddenly a loud whoosh was heard from behind Isuku. Whoosh. I think you're done, young Midoriya. Isuku quickly turned around and came face to face with the towering All Might, who was looking down at Isuku very sympathetically. Please, my boy, stop fighting. And rest. All Might told Isuku in a calm yet serious tone. He then placed a hand on Izuku's shoulder, making him flinch and putting all the other heroes on edge in case Isuku was going to attack All Might. But he didn't. I promise you'll see your mother. After you get medical attention. You have my word. Isuku didn't know why, but he couldn't help but believe him. He didn't want to, but something deep down was telling him otherwise. Before Isuku knew it, his quirk deactivated and felt very tired. Last thing before his body failed on him was All Might's reassuring face. Isuku lost consciousness and fell into the arms of All Might, who couldn't help but feel sorry for the young vigilante. Rest now, young Midoriya. All Might thought as he picked up the Isuku bridal style. He then looked to Aizawa. I'm taking him to Recovery Girl. Tell Tsukauchi I'll meet him there. Take care of the other child, please. Aizawa didn't make a fuss and nodded. With that, All Might leaped high in the air and began to head to UA High School, leaving the rest of the heroes in the lone street. Backdraft and Midnight went to check on Katsuki, who was still knocked out. Meanwhile, Aizawa looked where All Might took off with Isuku and couldn't help but sigh. I need a break. Fuck off. Isuku yelled out aggressively as he stopped using his Iron Make Quirk and immediately activated his Molten Hands Quirk. That got everyone on the defensive again. I'm not going anywhere. Suddenly a loud whoosh was heard from behind Isuku. Whoosh. I think you're done, young Midoriya. Isuku quickly turned around and came face to face with the towering All Might, who was looking down at Isuku very sympathetically. Please, my boy, stop fighting. And rest. All Might told Isuku in a calm yet serious tone. He then placed a hand on Izuku's shoulder, making him flinch and putting all the other heroes on edge in case Isuku was going to attack All Might. But he didn't. I promise you'll see your mother. After you get medical attention. You have my word. Isuku didn't know why, but he couldn't help but believe him. He didn't want to, but something deep down was telling him otherwise. Before Isuku knew it, his quirk deactivated and felt very tired. Last thing before his body failed on him was All Might's reassuring face. Isuku lost consciousness and fell into the arms of All Might, who couldn't help but feel sorry for the young vigilante. Rest now, young Midoriya. All Might thought as he picked up the Isuku bridal style. He then looked to Aizawa. I'm taking him to Recovery Girl. Tell Tsukauchi I'll meet him there. Take care of the other child, please. Aizawa didn't make a fuss and nodded. With that, All Might leaped high in the air and began to head to UA High School, leaving the rest of the heroes in the lone street. Backdraft and Midnight went to check on Katsuki, who was still knocked out. Meanwhile, Aizawa looked where All Might took off with Isuku and couldn't help but sigh. I need a break. The next day, at UA High School. It was the next day. The day after a night no one will forget. The night Japan's most infamous and mysterious vigilante revealed themselves. No one could believe it. The stalker was a middle schooler, a simple boy with a simple background. And yet he was able to hunt and strike fear into common thugs and other criminal scum. he took on 3 pro heroes at the same time. Saved a large group of civilians from death while putting his own in danger. It took All Might, the symbol of peace and Japan's #1 hero, to save and apprehend him. Even when he was captured, Isuku Midoriya Aka the stalker managed to escape and take 3 dangerous criminals down. The same ones who were locked up with him. Unfortunately, he didn't escape without a scratch. His injuries from his encounter with Eraserhead, Kamui Woods and Mount Lady did a number on him. But the fight he had with those inmates really got him. Yet he still kept on moving. When he was close to his destination after escaping, Isuku was confronted by his childhood friend, now turned bully, Katsuki Bakugo. Which ended in a fight. A serious fight most pro heroes would never find themselves in. And still Isuku walked away. When All Might and the other pros found him, they couldn't believe he was still standing. Sadly, that last fight took everything out of him. In the end, Isuku fainted in All Might's arms. After which, All Might rushed Isuku to the best doctor nurse he knew. Recovery girl. It took a lot, but Isuku was in stable condition and carefully cuffed to his bed. And under careful watch by All Might. The wielder of One for All stayed with Isuku all night. Along with Izuku's mother, Inko Midoriya, who All Might personally brought so she could be with her son. Something he wasn't supposed to do. In fact, he was supposed to turn Izuku into the local hospital where the police would take over from there. But All Might managed to pull some strings so Izuku would be under his watch. Something that Inko was most grateful for. There was also the fact that the hospital or any other didn't want Izuku under their care. For obvious reasons. Thank you again, Mr. All Might, for everything. Inko said in a low and grateful tone as she watched her son sleep from her chair. Which was very close to Izuku's bed. She then looked to All Might, who wasn't in his hero form. I can't thank you enough. All Might, also known to be Toshinori Yagi, just smiled in response. Think nothing of Mrs. Midoriya. All Might started with a kind smile. And please, call me Toshinori. After all, you do know my secret. Inko nodded with a smile. Last night was crazy and stressful for Inko Midoriya. First, her son was out past his curfew, like always. Then she found out on the TV that he was the stalker. A wanted and scary vigilante, by the way. Who was arrested for his crimes as the stalker and for assaulting and endangering pro heroes and many others. Inko almost fainted when that happened. She just about lost her mind when she heard explosions and fighting near her home. Which she knew involved Katsuki and someone else. Who she suspected was her son. After that, she tried her best to contact someone who could tell her what was going on and where her son was. Unfortunately, she was met with lies or silence. She was about to lose hope all of a sudden. All Might came knocking on her door and explained everything. She didn't need to know any more after that. All she cared about was seeing if her son was alright. All Might was about to carry Inko to Izuku. Which would have been faster. Sadly, his time limit had been spent. So he went from his hero form to his true form right then and there in front of Inko. Who took it just as well as you would expect. Sorry about fainting last night when you know. Inko sheepishly apologized, blushing. I'm easily startled. All Might laughed and gave a big smile that deepened Inko's blush. Again, think nothing of it. Still though, All Might began to softly say as he looked down at Izuku. I wish I could do more. That's when Inko blushed and the embarrassing expression disappeared. And was replaced by a saddened one. She knew that Izuku was in trouble. Deep trouble. The crimes he's committed as the stalker were some of the worst crimes a person could commit. Inko thanked God that Izuku hadn't killed anyone or gotten killed. It broke her heart to see her son like this. Inko slowly got up and walked over to her son. Seeing him like this, cuffed up, covered in injuries. She knew that Izuku had some scrapes and a few scars. Mostly from his younger years. But all of this was from the last few months. Inko looked down at his major injury from last night, the massive burn mark. She tried her best not to cry. All Might looked over at Inko and couldn't help but feel sorry for her. Mr. Toshinori, what's going to happen to my son? Inko softly asked with a bit of hesitation. Afraid of what kind of answer she was going to get. She turned to All Might with a serious yet somewhat misty-eyed face. Please be honest with me. All Might couldn't bear to see anyone giving him that kind of look. It made him feel helpless. All his power, he couldn't do a thing to help Inko from the truth. He didn't want to tell her, he also couldn't lie to her. She deserved to know. Even if it would cause her much pain. The symbol of peace signed, then took a deep breath. He looked down at the small woman with a serious gaze. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, Mrs. Midoriya. Izuku is looking to face some very serious consequences for what he's done. All Might spoke in a serious tone as he looked down at Inko. Who flinched. Izuku has committed some serious crimes, such as the stalker. As of last night, he's assaulted 19 people, 3 of whom are pro heroes and 1 being a police officer. 13 of his victims are now brain dead, with no hope of recovery. He escaped from lockup, placing multiple people in danger. He's also an unregistered quirk user. With a very dangerous quirk that's very similar to someone that could even give the most seasoned heroes nightmares. Inko suddenly froze in place, her face darkened as she looked down, trying to avoid All Might's gaze. "You know who I'm talking about, don't you?" All Might stated rather than ask. Because they both know who he was talking about. "What is your son's connection to the man called Siller?" Inko stood there for a while, not bothering to face the mighty hero, who kept looking down at the woman sympathetically. Eventually Inko spoke in a low tone. "Please don't call him that when I meet him. His name was Hisashi Midoriya." Inko explained with a soft yet sad smile. "We met a long time ago when I just got out of college. Around 16 years ago. He wasn't using his real face and identity, mind you. Still, I fell in love with the man. He loved me too. Not because of my quirk or looks. He loved me for me." All Might didn't know what to say. From what Inko was talking about, it didn't sound anything like the serial killer Siller. But he knew better. He remained quiet as he let Inko continue to speak. "We dated for a while, and eventually we had a baby on the way," Inko said with a soft smile as she looked over at Isuku, who was still asleep. "He asked me to marry him. It didn't take long for me to say yes. He was so giddy after that." Inko smiled as she laughed a little as she remembered that day. However, that smile soon disappeared. Everything seemed to be wonderful after that. But that changed when Hisashi finally told me who he was. Softy said in a downcast tone. "He told me who he was, what he did, and why. He even showed me his true face." Inko closed her eyes as she remembered her husband. Even though he lied to her and kept his secrets, she still loved him. After all, he gave her Isuku. Her baby boy. All Might remained silent as he tried to process all this. Siller, the serial killer who took quirks, was Izuku's father. He couldn't believe it. But truthfully, he kind of suspected it. Well, Izuku's quirk was eerily similar to All for One. It turned out to be very similar to Siller's. It all made sense now. "Before you ask, I don't know where he is." All Might looked at Inko, who had a serious yet saddened expression. "When Izuku was born, Hisashi left, but not before telling me why." Inko began to explain as he walked over to her son's side. She couldn't help but feel regret as she saw his unconscious form. "He told me there was always going to be people who would hunt him. Not able to forgive what he's done. I know he's a killer and what he did. But that didn't stop me from loving him. And from him being my child's father. He left to protect me and our son." Inko bent down and touched Izuku's cheek. She knew what he did and why. And she couldn't hate or fear him for it. It wasn't his fault. It was just his nature. With a sigh, Inko turned around to look at All Might. "I don't hate Hisashi. I couldn't bring myself to even if I wanted to," Inko said as her voice began to crack up. Her expression softened as it looked like she was going to cry. "I just wish my son didn't have to suffer because of him. And because of me." Inko suddenly began to cry now, making All Might feel very sympathetic towards the woman. He knew it wasn't her fault because of this. Not even Izuku's. Not being able to control and being fearful of one's quirks was normal. It was no one's fault. If anything, this was just plain bad luck. As Inko continued to cry, All Might decided he had enough. He walked over to the small crying woman, who stopped when she felt a hand gently touch her shoulder. She looked up to see All Might giving her a kind and sympathetic smile, slightly causing Inko to blush. "No one is to blame, Inko," All Might said, dropping formalities. "I don't know why, but something tells me your son isn't like his father. When I saw him save those people, I know he wouldn't do such terrible things unless he had no choice. Well, I have no idea how, I promise you. I will do everything in my power to help you and young Midoriya." Inko was speechless. She couldn't believe what was happening. The most powerful and popular hero in Japan was promising to help her and most importantly her son. The short mother began to weep once more. Suddenly she did something unexpected. She wrapped her arms around him, bringing him into a hug. All Might looked down at Inko in shock. But that changed when she spoke once more with a light sob. "Please save my son Toshinori," Inko pleaded, still misty-eyed. All Toshinori could do was nod. He couldn't say no even if he wanted. He didn't know how. But he was going to do everything he could to help Izuku. No matter what he did or who his father was. Suddenly an idea popped into his head. Or rather, an earlier idea his colleague and fellow hero Nezu suggested. Letting Izuku, a now known vigilante villain and an unregistered quirk user, join the UA High School. A well-known and prestigious hero school. Where only the best were accepted. People drive to be a hero. How would it work? Given his quirk and record, it would seem impossible. At least, that's what most would think. All Might had a plan. Meanwhile, at a local hospital. In a normal hospital room, Katsuki Bakugo was silently resting on his hospital bed, looking up at the ceiling. He had a few bruises and scratches here and there. He was also bandaged up. His face was expressionless as he kept his eyes locked on the ceiling. However, he wasn't like this a few hours ago. Apparently, after the fight, the hero sent him to the nearest hospital, where he slept through most of the night. When he woke up, he found him in hospital garb and on a hospital bed. His mom and dad by his side. Of course, they were relieved to see he was awake and alright. But that changed when his mom hit him over the head hard. The reason? For running off in the middle of the night and confronting Isuku. Most parents would hate the person who'd placed their son in the hospital. However, Mitsuki and Masaru Bakugo weren't like that. They both knew Isuku. Since he was a little boy when he and their son were best friends. Well, they didn't really know what was happening and why he was the stalker. They knew that he wouldn't have hurt Katsuki unless he had no choice. Mitsuki was of course mad. Mostly at her son's stubborn and hot-headed personality and ego. Both parents were outside Katsuki's room in the hallway, talking and giving their son some space. "I still can't believe this happened," Masaru said in a low tone. He looked over at his wife to see her looking through a window outside the hallway that showed their son and his room. "Why did this happen?" Mitsuki sighed as she shook her head. "This happened because our son is an idiot. He was the one who ran off in the night looking for trouble. It's his fault, Masaru," Mitsuki explained as she turned to her husband, who looked surprised by his wife's response. "I love our son, honey. I do it with all my heart. But you have to admit, he had this coming." Masaru hated to admit it, but Mitsuki was kind of right. Well, he loved his son. Masaru knew that ever since his quirk manifested, Katsuki changed. And not for the better. He had grown into an arrogant and aggressive teenager. Well, a long time ago his mother wasn't so different. Mitsuki on the other hand knew better. Unfortunately, it seemed that Katsuki didn't. "I suppose you're right, Mitsuki. I just wish this didn't need to happen in the first place." Masaru started with a frown. "Still can't believe Isuku did this. For heaven's sake, he seems such a passive and calm young lad. What happened?" Mitsuki sighed once again. She wanted to know why as well. "I don't know, Masaru. I tried calling Inko earlier, but it just kept going straight to voicemail," Mitsuki said bitterly with a frown. She was annoyed, of course. But she was more worried about anything. "God, I hope she's alright." Masaru noticed how his wife looked. With a small smile, he walked over to her and wrapped his arm around her, surprising her. "I'm sure this isn't easy for her. But you and I both know Inko is a tough woman." Mitsuki smiled softly as she nodded. She then leaned over and gave her husband a small peck on the cheek, causing Masaru to smile. Eventually, both parents were looking through the window at their son, who remained quiet and emotionless. "Do you think he'll be alright, dear?" Masaru asked worryingly as he kept his eyes on their son. Mitsuki remained silent. She really didn't know how to answer her husband. Their son really hasn't been himself since he woke up. He barely talked or even complained. Something he liked to do constantly. Now, it seemed that the fight he had with Isuku affected him harder than they expected. "I don't know, Masaru," Mitsuki softly said as she placed her hand on the window. While this was happening, Katsuki remained in the same state we saw him in. Just laying there while looking up at the ceiling. He felt lost. No, he felt more annoyed and confused, if anything. All of this was a lot to take in. More so for him than anybody else. The hothead of a blonde still couldn't believe it. He lost. The Deku out of all fucking people. Not only that, but he also found out that the little shit stain had a quirk. And not just a quirk, but a bunch of them apparently. All these years he's been lying. Lying to everyone, his mom, their school, and classmates. To him. The dark scowl quickly appeared on Katsuki. He then clenched his hands into a fist. "Deku, you shithead," Katsuki growled out. Losing to Deku really pissed him off. Being lied to by him only pissed him off even more. He wanted to get off this bed and track him down. Have a rematch. Because that fight was bullshit. And so was the result. At least, that's what he thought. How he felt was completely different. Katsuki felt something he never wanted to feel again. Weak. Weak, he hated this feeling. It had been so long since he's felt this that he almost forgot about it. Ever since his quirk appeared. He's felt and acted completely differently. Like he could do anything. Like he could beat anyone. That's one of the reasons he wanted to beat All Might and become number one. Right now though, it felt like that was impossible. That fight he had with Deku. It made him realize something. Even though he had this badass and strong quirk, he still lost. To Deku. Who was seriously injured for whatever reason. He threw everything he had at that shithead and he still beat him. Well, that loss weighed heavy on his mind. It was what that bastard said that really pissed him off. Go home, Kaken, I don't want to hurt you. I may be hurt, but I'm not the same Deku. Go home. You know what is between the two of us? I think I'm stronger than you. Katsuki's hands began to smoke a little. His scowl only deepened as he remembered those words. All of them came from Deku. That piece of shit. It pissed him off that worthless shithead caused him to feel this way. He wanted to kill that bastard. But he felt like he couldn't. Not after what happened. He wasn't an idiot. As much as it pissed him off to admit it. What Deku said might be true. He wasn't the same. He saw those scars and injuries. He saw what quirks he had. Well, the ones he saw anyways. There was no telling what else that bastard was hiding. If he wanted to get another shot at Deku, he would have to be ready. But how? That's when he remembered something that shitty nerd said. You're strong, Kaken, but you are not stronger than me. Well, you've been doing a bit of training. You haven't reached your full limit. Deku was right. Sure, he's worked out and jogged here and there. Even practiced using his quirk. But never really proper training. He was of course going to do a regiment right after he graduated from that shitty school. So he could join the UA, but now all that seemed to change. If he wanted to be no. 1 and kick that nerd's ass, he needed to get serious. I have experience and power on my side. And to be perfectly honest, I haven't even reached my full limit. Katsuki let out a growl as he remembered that. The look on that bastard's face. He couldn't wait to see Deku again. With a newfound determination and a bit of anger, Katsuki brought his fist up into the air. I swear I'll be number 1. Katsuki roughly stated as he clenched and teeth. Deku, you bastard. Next time it won't be me on the ground. Count on it, you fucking nerd. Wherever Isuku was. Whether he was in jail or still on the run. Katsuki would see him again. And their encounter won't end like last time. An hour later with All Might. It's been an hour since All Might talked with Inko and checked in with young Midoriya. There he learned the tragic tale of how Inko met Izuku's father. The man called Siller. Something the all-powerful hero was still trying to process. But right now he didn't have the time to do so. Why? Because he was rushing to the UA conference room. Where Izuku's fate will be decided. The chief of police would be there, along with a few government officials. Mostly a few judges and other people. The whole UA staff and a few pro heroes will be there too. Normally this wouldn't take place at a high school. But unfortunately they didn't want to take any chances. Better to have Izuku close if he were to try anything. They still didn't have a definite idea of his quirk. And what other quirks he may have. All Might was zooming through the halls of the school at high speed in his hero form. Quickly trying to find the conference room. He seemed to have forgotten the room number and time of the trial when he was checking on Izuku. It was kind of embarrassing really. Since he was technically a part of the UA staff. Well, not officially anyways. Darn it. All Might really needed to find this room. He knew there was only one conference room. He just didn't know where it was. After what seemed like a good 20 minutes. It looked like All Might found it. With a mighty yell, All Might opened the door and rushed in like a blur. Am I late? Everyone in the room looked towards the entrance of the room. And saw All Might. With what seemed to be a forced and worried smile. From what All Might could see. The so-called trial of Izuku seemed to have just started. Which was very fortunate. All Might looked around to see Nezu along with Aizawa and a few of the UA staff. He also saw some of the government officials the government sent. They were sitting near Kenji Tsuragami, the police chief. Who looked like a human with Beagle's head. Standing right next to him was All Might's friend. Naomasa the detective. That wasn't all he saw. A few pro heroes were present that weren't a part of the UA staff. To start off small, he saw Native, Death Arms, Backdraft along with Mount Lady. They were only there because they were the ones who confronted Izuku when he escaped. The major power he saw in the room really surprised him. All of whom were ranked heroes. Like him. He saw his old friend and fellow hero Kugo Sakamata, better known as Gang Orca. The number 10 hero. Next was Shinyu Kamihara Aka Edshot. Sitting next to him was one of the heroes who confronted and helped capture Izuku. Blue Genist, who looked very bored. Last, but definitely not least was someone All Might never expected to be here. Denji Todoroki, the man also known better as Endeavor. Japan's number 2 hero. His ambitious and prideful fellow hero and rival. Who wanted nothing more than to surpass him. Even if it meant hurting and alienating his family. But that's a story we'll catch up more on later. Late, as always, All Might. Endeavor callously started with a scowl. He then shook his head lightly. Pitiful. All Might nervously laughed as he straightened up. Sorry about that. I was busy talking with a close friend. All Might said, trying his best to look natural. It wasn't really a lie. But it'd probably be for the best if his talk with Inko remained in the dark. Soon All Might coughed a little as he walked over to the long and circular table. Anyways, am I too late for this mock trial? A few of the government officials felt offended by this. None of them were expecting the number one hero to say such a thing. Many of the heroes remained quiet, the exception being Nezu, who kept on smiling. Of course not, my friend. Nezu stated rather happily and perky. We were just about to begin. All Might didn't show it, but he was relieved. Very relieved. He still had time to try and put his plan into action. Also to say his piece. Good, that's good. Because I really need to say something. All Might started still smiling. But that stopped when he stopped at the large table. With everyone's eyes on him. We all know why we're here. We're here to decide the fate of someone. I rather like to have this done in a proper court, like always. Unfortunately, that's not going to happen. Mainly because some of you think this person deserves such treatment. Everyone remained quiet as they listened to All Might. A few couldn't help but agree with him. Many of course averted their eyes or tried their best to not look guilty or uncomfortable. I won't disagree with you that Isuku has committed some serious crimes. Crimes that might seem unforgivable to you. He's hurt and done some terrible things. Few nodded with what All Might said. The rest silently listened. But we'd be fools to only judge on the bad he's done. And not the good he's also done. I'm not going to defend what he's been doing is right. No matter the reason, what he did was wrong. Though to blame someone for something they can't seem to control would also be wrong. Now that immediately got everyone by surprise. More confused than anything. What was All Might talking about? What do you mean All Might? Gang Orca asked. Yeah, you're telling us that this kid has been hurting and attacking people because he was forced to? Vlad King asked in a rather unconvinced tone and expression. That seems very unlikely. All Might nodded. It would seem so. That is, if you knew anything about young Midoriya's quirk. All Might stated. Getting everyone's attention. I'm not going to go into full detail. Mainly because I promised someone to keep it that way. So, I'm going to cut to the chase and purpose something. This caught everyone by surprise. They've never heard or seen All Might act like this. Not even his close friends. And that would be? Kenji Tsuragami sternly asked politely. The room got tense as All Might just stood there. Like he was preparing for something bad to happen. Which only made most of the people present anxious. Even a few of the pro heroes. Because they have never seen or heard All Might act this way before. Eventually All Might took a deep breath and spoke. I want Isuku Midoriya to be placed under my custody and care. And be able to attend UA high school. Should he pass the entrance exam? The room immediately went dead quiet. No one said a word or even dared move. After what seemed like eternity. Someone finally spoke. Could you repeat that? Kenji Tsuragami asked, clearly stunned and confused. Meanwhile in New York City, New York. Ever since quirks were made public. Things have never been the same. Well, the first known account of quirks was seen in King City, China. That was a complete lie. Quirks have been around since the late 1940s, maybe even longer. Back then they weren't even considered quirks. Rather, special abilities. But that's a tale for another day. Right now let's go to the present. In a large mansion, in a big bedroom. A woman laid on a big bed hooked up to medical equipment and other things. The woman was frail and old with white hair. She had a calm yet bored demeanor. The television was on. It was a large television which was showing a news report. Not about some war or terrible villain or terrorist attack. It was about what happened last night in Japan. When the most wanted vigilante in Japan was caught. And whose identity was revealed to the whole world. The world never changes. The woman murmured out as she sighed. Unfortunately. A minute later, the bedroom door opened. The woman looked to see a large man walking towards her. He was big and a bit chubby and also a bit old. Not as old as the woman. He had short black hair with a bit of gray and an honest face. Even though he carried himself in an aloof way. He was dressed sharply and carried a handgun which was holstered. When he made it to the woman's bedside. He sighed deeply. I see you've seen the news. The man said as he looked at the TV. He then turned to look down at the old woman who didn't look amused at all. Did you already know this would happen, Angela? Angela, better known as Angela Petrelli, smirked a little as she shook her head a little. You know that my dreams aren't always accurate, Mr. Parkman. Angela stated as she began to cough a little. After all, Peter along with Gabriel proved that to me a long time ago. Mr. Parkman frowned as he nodded. Still, do you think this kid is the product of your little project? Mr. Parkman asked, still frowning. It soon showed a photo of Isuku on the TV. The last thing we want is one of your children running around and causing mayhem. We don't need another Siller around. Angela noticed the contempt and venom in Mr. Parkman's tone when he said that last part. He had every right to. Both he and Siller had history. I'm afraid we may be too late. Angela bitterly stated with another cough. There are reports coming in from South America that people with powerful abilities are going missing there. And a few days later they're found dead with their heads cut open. Mr. Parkman flinched a little as he clenched his hand into a fist. Are you sure it's really him and not you know? Angela stopped coughing and shook her head. It could be Gabriel or it could be one of my children, as you like to call them. Angela said with a sigh. We better send a team to go check. I fear that word got out to either one of them about this business in Japan. My dream will come true. Mr. Parkman nodded. His attention then went back to the TV. As it kept on reporting the news about Isuku. You didn't answer me before. This kid. Mr. Parkman started to say as he looked very closely at the picture of Isuku. Is he a product of Project Reborn? Or no? Angela frowned as she took a look up at the TV. You know, reading my mind would be easier than waiting for an answer. Yeah, but you're a hard nut to crack, Angela. Mr. Parkman said somewhat jokingly. Getting a small smile from Angela. Come on. You know I'll keep on asking. The old woman sighed as she decided to come clean. He's not one of mine. It looks like Gabriel has been busy. Angela said with a small smile. That changed when she saw the look on Mr. Parkman's face. She knew that look all too well. It seems the boy has inherited his father's hunger. How unfortunate. At least he hasn't killed someone. Yet. Mr. Parkman said, getting an annoyed look from Angela. We should send a team to evaluate this kid's powers to see if he's a threat. Mr. Parkman suggested, causing Angela to groan at his request. What? Angela, you know this kid is going to be trouble. He's already put at least a dozen people in the hospital. With no hope of recovery. Angela just scoffed as he grabbed the remote of the TV. Turning it off. She looked up at Mr. Parkman with a stern expression. Matt, let the local authorities and heroes handle this. From what we could tell they got this under control. Angela stated, trying to calm Mr. Parkman down a little. But unfortunately it didn't seem to work. Angela knew Parkman, he wasn't just going to let this go. Tell you what, I'll call Hiro or Ando to check things out. They both owe me a favor. I'm sure they'll make some time to check things out. Being retired you're bound to have time. Will that calm your paranoia down? Mr. Parkman gave a subtle glare down at the old woman. Who glared right back. Not wanting to start something, Mr. Parkman sighed in defeat. He nodded, causing Angela to softly smile. But that stopped when she began to cough again. This time however it turned into a coughing fit. Mr. Parkman quickly tried to help Angela but stopped when she raised her hand. Eventually she stopped. But I looked very tired. I don't have a long mat. Even with all these doctors, experimental drugs and treatments I'm on borrowed time. Angela bitterly said. Still, even though it sounded dark and hopeless. That didn't stop the old woman from smiling. I wish Nathan was here to see what the world has become. I wonder what he would think of it. Matt Parkman frowned sadly as he looked at his boss. Angela Petrelli, an old woman who was very old. Who's been around for a long time. She along with her family and friends tried their best to keep the existence of Quirks under wraps. Sadly all that seemed for nothing. She lost many friends and family because of this. Notably her eldest son. Nathan Petrelli. I'm not sure what Nathan would think of this world, Angela. But I know he would do anything to make sure that it kept on spinning. Angela softly nodded. Matt was right. A brief moment went by and Angela turned to Matt. Send Renee and one of Noah's boys to South America. It might be a waste of time, but we can't take any chances. Whether it's Gabriel or not, we can't let these murders continue. Matt stood up straight and nodded. He then began to leave. Eventually leaving Angela alone. My dreams I really hope are wrong. Angela softly said as she tried to go to sleep. But I couldn't. All because of a certain dream she had. A dream that was more of a nightmare. She saw a city in ruins and in flames. Hearing the screams of terror and yells of anguish. Seeing countless people on the ground dead or dying. That's not all she saw. She saw a young man with freckles and green hair. He was smiling as he was covered in something. He was covered in blood. And it wasn't his blood. My dreams I really hope are wrong. Angela softly said as she tried to go to sleep. But I couldn't. All because of a certain dream she had. A dream that was more of a nightmare. She saw a city in ruin and in flames. Hearing the screams of terror and yells of anguish. Seeing people on the ground dead or dying. That's not all she saw. She saw a young man with freckles and green hair. He was smiling as he was covered in something. He was covered in blood. And it wasn't his blood. But Isuku, a few hours later. All our young hero vigilante felt was pain. All he saw was darkness. But that wasn't all. He felt something else. He felt at peace. For the first time in a long time he felt at ease. Sure there was pain. But it felt good. It felt normal. But the small grown Izuku began to slowly open his eyes. He saw that he was looking up at a white ceiling. It looked like it belonged in a hospital or nurse's room. Izuku felt groggy, a bit of pain, but that was minor. He also felt like he was laying on something soft. Like a bed. That wasn't all. When he tried to move his right hand but found out he couldn't, he looked over at his hand and found out why. It was because he was handcuffed to his bed. Suddenly Izuku realized what was going on. And what had happened. "No," Izuku softly said with a regretful expression. He closed his eyes and shook his head, hoping that this was all a bad dream. Sadly it wasn't. This whole thing was real. God, what have I done? Images of last night started to fill Izuku's mind. The way he stalked and almost attacked that poor woman. His encounter with Eraserhead, which eventually turned into a fight that involved Kamui Woods and the rookie Mount Lady. Heroes he looked up to. He attacked and seriously injured one of them. Hell, innocent civilians got into the crossfire. Thank God no one got seriously hurt. At least, he hoped no one got hurt too bad. What he remembered about last night was sketchy at best. When his hunger isn't fed or satisfied, controlling it is impossible. Sure, he could fight it off. Like he did when he nearly attacked that woman. But there was only so much he could do. There were two events last night he remembered well. The first was his escape from the police station, which resulted in his newest and nasty injury. His burn from that molten hand guy. And the 3 new quirks he borrowed. He only got to use 2 recently, but he had an idea what to do. After that his control began to return and his hunger went away. What happened after that was something he would never forget. His fateful and regretful fight with his former best friend, Kaken. Izuku slowly used his free hand to cover his eyes. Soon he began to softly cry. His worst fears had happened. His quirk had gotten the better of him. He almost did the unthinkable last night. He almost went against his promise. Not to hurt anyone innocent. He attacked and injured the very heroes he strived to become. He fought and hurt Kaken. Even though they weren't friends. It still hurts. "I'm a monster," Izuku cried softly. "No, you aren't a young Midoriya." Izuku stopped crying as he quickly moved his hand to look where that voice came from. He looked at the far end of the room to see a frail and skinny man with baggy clothes staring at him while he was leaning against a wall. Izuku unknowingly jolted a little in surprise. He thought he was alone. But apparently not. Who are you?" Izuku nervously asked with a shaky tone. The man chuckled lightly as he walked over to Izuku's side, where he took a seat on the nearest chair. Afterwards the man sat there staring at Izuku, who looked even more nervous. Who was this guy? Izuku didn't know why. But something was oddly familiar about this guy. Like he knew him from somewhere. Though he just didn't know how. Izuku took a look at the man's eyes. They were dark and a blue piercing color. Finally Izuku decided to focus on using his main quirk, which would probably help him figure this guy out. It was a bit risky considering the hunger that came along with it. But he'd already satisfied it. Usually after he took a quirk, it would be weeks before he would get hungry. Since he took 3 last night. He hoped that would satisfy it for a while. Our green-haired hero vigilante focused his eyes on the man. Analyzing the man from head to toe. Causing him to raise an eyebrow. A second later Izuku gasped as his eyes and mouth widened in shock. All Might! Izuku screamed out in shock. All Might immediately grimaced in shock as he unexpectedly spewed out blood from his mouth. Only making Izuku scream out in panic and more shock. Hhhh. Boy, this kid has a sharp eye. All Might thought as he wiped away any blood from his mouth. His eyes then narrowed a little. Or was that his quirk at work? Either way, this kid has a lot of promise. As this was happening, Izuku was trying to calm down. Keyword, trying. All of this was a lot to take in. He had so many questions. Like why All Might looked the way he did, right? Was he sick or injured? Why is he here? Where was it? Where was his mom? Why wasn't he locked up somewhere? What kind of damage did he cause? Did anyone die? I bet you have a lot of questions. All Might stated as he crossed his arms. And I'm willing to answer them. This caught Izuku by surprise. Oh really? All Might smiled. Even in his sickly form, his smile shined brightly. He then gave Izuku a big thumbs up. Just like a true hero. Of course, young Midoriya. What kind of hero would I be if I didn't help all those in need? Izuku felt at ease more than a while ago. But he was still worried. He could barely remember what happened last night. Bits and pieces of what he did. He needed answers. What happened after I fought Kaken? All Might raised an eyebrow in confusion. He didn't know anyone by that name. A second later he quickly realized that Izuku was talking about Katsuki Bakugo. The young man who Izuku fought with. From what Aizawa told him, young Bakugo was fine. At least compared to Izuku's injuries. After your fight with young Bakugo, you attempted to leave, but you were stopped by Blue Genist and a small number of other heroes. Afterwards you attempted to escape. Thankfully I arrived just before you collapsed from exhaustion. Isuku didn't know what to say. So, he simply sighed and frowned. If you're wondering what happened to young Bakugo, don't fret. Last I heard he was recovering from minor injuries. He should be out in a day or two. Our green-haired vigilante looked up at All Might with a surprised expression, who smiled and nodded. Izuku's lips quivered a little as he looked like he was going to cry again. Thankfully he didn't. All he did was suck it up and nodded. Thank you All Might," Izuku muttered out. "I'm happy to hear Kaken is alright." All Might nodded but looked down at Izuku with curiosity. It was quite strange to hear that from him, considering how that battle between them went. He's seen and been through many battles in his time. And from what he heard, those two boys were out for blood. If All Might was being completely honest, it kind of reminded him of his recent battle with All For One. Thinking that caused All Might to frown. He didn't want to think of young Midoriya and Bakugo fighting to the death. It wasn't right. Eventually All Might decided to lay those thoughts to rest. Right now he needs to talk to Izuku about what is going to happen to him. "Midoriya, there is something you need to be aware of," All Might said rather seriously, getting Izuku's attention. "As you already know, you committed a number of crimes last night. Very serious crimes. And I'm afraid these crimes only stack up to what you've been doing the last few months. Things look rather bleak for you my boy." Most would look terrified or act hysterical after being told that, especially considering if they were in Izuku's place. Ever since quirks first appeared, multiple laws were in place to deal with them. Many countries dealt with them in their own ways. Japan happened to be one of the few lenient ones. At least that's what most thought. Several laws and procedures were in place to ensure the conscientious use of quirks. For example, during elementary school, children receive quirk counseling in order to learn how to use their powers responsibly. Public displays of quirks are against the law, except in cases of self-defense, such as when one is under attack or preventing someone else from being attacked. Unregistered quirk users and vigilantes were a completely different matter. Unfortunately Izuku fell into that category. Before pro-heroes and hero regulations were ever a thing. And the laws that would be made with them to help protect the population. A period of social collapse happened and an age of upheaval began. Many individuals used their quirks in controversial ways. One of which was taking the law into your own hands. Yes, the origins of pro-heroes traced back to vigilantes. Some cases varied from individual to individual. Some used their quirks for revenge or personal gain. However, there were those who used their quirks for the greater good. Like patrolling for criminals or helping those in need. From extreme accidents to natural disasters. These individuals unknowingly sparked the flame that would eventually cause the idea of professional heroes. At that time though they were considered lawbreakers. Still, laws back then involving vigilantism were pretty lenient. However, that completely changed when the governments of the world made the pro-heroes and quirk regulations. After the creation of the pro-heroes, many who were considered vigilantes gladly became pro-heroes. Officially licensed to keep and enforce the peace. With the permission and full support of the government and law enforcement. Those who didn't accept the new laws or transition of becoming licensed heroes for the government either retired or would eventually be arrested. The world's government soon made vigilantes and the unlicensed use of quirks illegal and forbidden. Each country of course had different laws and punishments involving vigilantes. Eventually vigilantes faded into obscurity and were thought to be no better than villains or other criminal scum. Today vigilantism is considered a heavy offense. In Izuku's case he could be facing some serious time in prison. And that's just with one offense. During his time as the stalker, Izuku had committed multiple offenses. Sure, there were a few vigilantes out there pro-heroes left alone. Vigilantes like Knuckledister, Pop Step and Crawler. But the stalker was a completely different matter. As if that wasn't bad enough. Our young hero was now also considered an unlicensed quirk user. Quirk registration and regulations were put into place soon after pro-heroes were created. In order to evaluate and in some cases help certain individuals, quirks. That's why many today are given quirk counseling at a young age. Unfortunately, even with these laws and procedures in place, there are those who fall or slip through the cracks. Some out of fear for their privacy or just because. Sadly, most of these people would eventually become villains in time. However, in rare cases there are those who are like Izuku. It's not impossible for a quirk to manifest late. Even like Izuku's quirk. Though the nature of his quirk is what's going to cause problems for him. From what Izuku figured out is that his quirk was a mutant one. In the last few months of studying his quirk and any information on quirks in general, he could tell his quirk was special, very special. But also very dangerous. The last few months told him that much. The ability to copy steal quirks. That thought alone would cause fear. In this day and age, people care deeply about their quirks. It's what made them unique. Whether it was powerful or not, it was a part of them. A part of their identity. And the idea of someone taking that was frightening. Isuku sighed deeply. It's true what All Might said. Things looked very bleak for him. Still though, Isuku wasn't afraid. Well, maybe a little. But not as much as she should be. Ever since his quirk appeared, all he's done is cause fear and suffering. While many people he hurt deserved it, there were those who didn't deserve it. He's done terrible things. And maybe a bleak future is what he deserved. A small sad smile appeared on Izuku's face. It wasn't all bad. At least he had a quirk. Quite a number of them in fact. Even though how he got them was wrong. His time as the stalker wasn't all bad either. While many wouldn't admit, himself included. Izuku had stopped a number of criminals. All of them are dangerous in their own right. How he beat them was wrong. But there were times he saved a few innocent people as the stalker. Yesterday was one of them. Even though he was the one who caused the danger. As the stalker he was not a hero. He didn't deserve such a worthy title. Heck, being called a vigilante was too good for him. At least that's what Izuku thought. But he did save people at times. Sometimes from things most would consider worse than death. Our young hero remembered an instance where he saved a young woman from being raped. And another when he saved a man from being killed during a mugging. Those who were committing such crimes were targets of his at the time. All he wanted were their quirks. But when he saw such nefarious and unforgivable things, he couldn't sit by and just let them happen. But that didn't change what he did wrong. Being a hero was all Izuku wanted to be in life. Even when he was told he couldn't. Or when Kaken and his friends would beat him up and tell him to give up. He didn't waver, not once. When he found out he had a quirk. His very own quirk. He thought things would change for the better. His mom would finally be proud of him. His peers and teachers acknowledged him. Kaken, his former best friend, finally acknowledged him as an equal. Maybe even a friend. His dream of becoming a hero is possible now. To be like his idol All Might. Unfortunately that didn't happen. He was ashamed, frightened even by his quirk. So much that he hid it from everyone. Even his mom. The person he trusted and loved out of anyone. Forced to indulge his hunger to protect her and everyone. Slowly after taking quirk after quirk from criminals and other scum. He wasn't a hero. Whatever punishment the government and police had in store for him, he would gladly accept it. However, there was something that was troubling him. What about his mom? What was going to happen to her? Would she be arrested too? For unknowingly sheltering a wanted vigilant? And if not, then what about the whole world knowing she was his mom? He hurt a lot of people. People with friends and family are probably not above revenge. What was going to happen? All Might, I'm okay with whatever punishment I deserve. Izuku mutters out with a small frown. I'll accept anything. But please don't let anything happen to my mom. All Might looked at Izuku in shock. What was he talking about? I don't care what happens to me. But please, my mom is innocent in all this. She didn't know who I was or what I was doing. I beg of you, even if you people aren't going to charge her. She'll still be in danger because of me. Suddenly out of nowhere, Izuku activated his Iron May quirk and broke out of his handcuffs. Causing All Might to jump out of his chair and backed up. He didn't want to fight Izuku. But if he intended to attack or escape, he had no choice but to stop him. However, All Might was about to transform. Something unexpected happened. Izuku, still weak and injured from last night, slowly got out of his bed and fell to his knees. Now on his hands and knees he placed his forehead on the floor. He was begging. Still hurt from last night, Izuku did his best to hide the pain. Tears silently began to flow down his cheeks. Please, All Might. I don't deserve mercy or even have the right to ask you this. Please, my mom is innocent. All Might was at a loss. Here he had Izuku crying and begging on his knees. He could tell that young Midoriya was in pain. Yet he still continued. All for his mother's sake. For what seemed like forever, Izuku kneeled there. On his knees begging and softly crying. Eventually something happened. Izuku suddenly felt a hand grasp his shoulder. He slowly looked up to see his idol looking down at him. With a sympathetic look and smile. Young Midoriya, there is no need for this, my boy. Your mother is safe. No charges will be brought upon her. I also personally saw to it that she be placed under police and pro-hero protection. You have nothing to worry about. Nothing is going to happen to her on my watch. I promise. Izuku's eyes widened in shock. He couldn't believe it. Here was his idol telling him that his mom was alright and safe. And that he personally made sure she was safe. That's probably more than anything a person has ever done for his mom. More than his father anyways. Really? Izuku timidly asked with a sniffle. Yes, my boy. You have my word, nothing is going to happen to your mother. All Might started still smiling. The same goes for you, young Midoriya. Izuku soon looked confused. What do you mean? Izuku asked as he wiped his eyes. All Might sighed a little. But I was still smiling. He knew he had some explaining to do. You may want to take a seat for this, my boy. All Might said as he helped Izuku off the ground. Izuku then took a seat on his hospital bed, waiting for All Might to continue, which he did. You already know that you're in big trouble. And originally you were supposed to be placed in a maximum penitentiary for minors such as yourself. For how long would be anyone's guess. Though it would be a long-term sentence for sure. Izuku began to feel a little scared. None of that sounded great at all. Also, given how your quirk works. Or rather quirks if we're being specific. You'd probably be placed where we send most of our powerful and dangerous criminals. Regardless of your age. Most likely to Naraka prison or maybe one of our secret ones. After hearing that, the life in Izuku's eyes disappeared and was replaced with a blank and dark gaze. He wasn't scared anymore. He was absolutely terrified. He was expecting to go to prison. But hearing it and how serious it sounded terrified him. All Might noticed the look in Izuku's eyes and decided to continue. Before the poor boy has a panic attack. Don't fret, young Midoriya. Originally that was the case, but now you have nothing to worry about. All Might explained. You see, a few hours ago there was a gathering of higher-ups from the government, police, pro-heroes, and staff from UA High School. Just us. No reporters, TV crews or journalists. I was also there in attendance. Why, you may ask? Well, we were all there to decide your fate. Izuku didn't know what to say. He was shocked, but more confused. Why was his fate decided behind closed doors and in secret? Was it because he's the stalker? One of the most infamous vigilantes in Japan's history. Or maybe it was because of his quirk. It was no secret now that he could steal copy quirks. How he did it wasn't nice at all either. It wasn't surprising people would be afraid of him. Even the government and pro-heroes saw how much of a threat he was. Before you jump to conclusions and assume the worst, Midoriya, let me tell you what happened. You may want to get comfortable. This may take a while. Not wanting to question his idol or cause any more problems, Izuku got comfy and focused all his attention on All Might, who began to tell what went down hours ago. Alright, it had just been a few minutes since I arrived. And things kind of went nuts. Earlier today. The room where the trial of Izuku Midoriya, aka the stalker, was in chaos. People were yelling and arguing on all sides. From government officials to pro-heroes. All because of All Might and what he said. Well, this is going just as I predicted. All Might thought with a small sigh. Right now the symbol of peace stood there. With his arms crossed behind his back. His expression was serious as he let the shouting and arguing continue. The only ones who weren't going crazy were himself, Endeavor, Aizawa, Nezu, Blue Genist, and Amasa. Eventually All Might grew tired of all this because it was leading nowhere. So, he got everyone's attention by clapping his hands together. And with his strength it was loud enough to cause multiple birds outside to fly off in fear. The room was dead quiet as everyone looked to All Might. Thank you for quieting down and giving me your attention. Now, I know you all have questions about why I'm asking for such a strange request. But please. Hear me out. Many looked around the room. Seeing if anyone would object. No one did. It would seem the floor is yours. Nezu happily chirped with his signature smile. Go ahead, my friend. All Might smiled a little as he gave Nezu a nod. When I first became a pro-hero, I saw the world as many of us should. Good and evil. For the longest time I've given so much to uphold the law and protect the innocent. I've lost friends and colleagues in this line of work. We all have. Why, you may ask? Because we're the good guys. We are the ones who uphold the law and keep the forces of evil from overtaking those who are innocent. And I truly believe that is what's right. Heroes, police, and government officials sat there listening to All Might's words. Many of them couldn't help but agree with what he was saying. Being a hero or being in the police was dangerous work. But it was necessary. Still, many of them wondered where All Might was going with all of this. I was taught to do what's right. One would guess that's why I became the symbol of peace. I've stopped and fought many villains these past years. Some are even more powerful than me. Yet in the end I would somehow always emerge victorious. I put away many dangerous individuals behind bars. Because that's what's right. Simple as that. All Might suddenly stopped for a brief moment as he thought about his next words carefully. Finally he continued on. Yet when I look back on all the battles I've won and villains I've put away, I can't help but feel like I've done nothing more than keep this endless cycle going. All Might said softly with a small conflicted expression. Most of the villains and criminals that I help place behind bars stay there. But there are a few who walk. and continue to abuse their quirks for their own agendas. In the end it feels like I haven't accomplished much as the symbol of peace. A lot of the people in the room were shocked to hear All Might's words. They couldn't believe how All Might, the symbol of peace, felt. Many of the younger heroes in the room didn't want to believe. Same with the people from the government. However, there were few who pondered All Might's words. Aizawa, Blue Genist, Gang Orca, and Endeavor being a few of them. Was he right? If so, then does that mean whatever they've accomplished as heroes meant nothing? For one certain hothead pro-hero, he just snorted and looked annoyed. If this goes anywhere, hurry it along, All Might. Endeavor harshly spoke out with an irritated tone. The symbol of peace smiled a little at Endeavor's response. Even though they were rivals. One-sided anyways. All Might respected Endeavor. What I'm trying to say is that I've talked to young Midoriya. Talked to his mother. Seen what he's done in the last 24 hours. He's a good kid, no doubt he's made mistakes. Some very serious mistakes. But that's because he can't control his quirk. Having awakened your quirk at such an age would take a toll on anyone. The boy needs help. Not to be sent to some god knows where prison. Everyone in the room had their own opinions about what All Might was saying. 3 or 4 agreed with him. Many however did not. Only because they were either afraid of Isuku or held the law in very high regard. Others were still on the fence though. Sure, what All Might was saying could be right. But that doesn't excuse all the things Isuku did as the stalker. All Might, what you have done in service for this country and justice as a whole is nothing short of amazing. All of us are in your debt. A government official began to say in a professional tone, yet giving All Might a condescending stare. But what you are requesting is simply impossible. Mr. Midoriya is a criminal and unregistered quirk user. And will be dealt with as such. Almost wouldn't say it like that. Least of all to All Might. Most agreed with the official statement. Though they didn't openly say it. Silence was all that was heard as everyone looked towards All Might. Who had his head lowered a little. No one saw his expression. For a brief moment many could have sworn they heard knuckles cracking from behind him. Finally All Might looked up to stare at everyone. His expression was a complete opposite of what he normally had. His stare was cold and serious. It even caused a few present to flinch. That's rather unfortunate. All Might simply said with a grim tone. Still, I won't be deterred because you said no. Instantly the room grew tense. Like the air had gotten a bit harder to breathe. For some they either flinched or were shaking. Others like Nezu, Aizawa, Namasa, Chief of Police, and top-tier pro-heroes remained unaffected. In fact, Nezu was smiling. I've given a lot for justice and the innocent. A lot for this country and its people. I would gladly give even more if needed. Because I'm a hero, the symbol of peace. But I don't have the right to call myself that if I can't help this boy. Isuku Midoriya, he may have done terrible things. But damn it. He deserves a chance to redeem himself. A determined yet frustrated scowl appeared on All Might's face. Something many have never seen before in their lives. Even Aizawa and Endeavor were taken back by their fellow colleagues' shift in attitude. I was hoping it wouldn't have to come to this. But you've left me no other choice. Isuku Midoriya will be placed under my care and custody. In time hopefully he will be able to attend UA High School. It's not too late for him to change his path. I will save him. If you won't allow me this, then you all leave me no choice but to retire from heroics. Just like that, the room had gone dead silent. Fear and shock was all that anyone present felt. Even All Might's closest and trusted friends and allies were shocked by this. Was All Might serious about retiring? Hey, are you serious, All Might? Is he for real? This is nuts. DC can't do that, right? As everyone voiced their own opinions and worries. All Might had a serious glare. That was directed at the government officials. Well, something I wouldn't be proud of. I am dead serious. I love being a hero, not because of the attention or action. But being able to save innocent people so they could lead happy and safe lives. All Might stated as he clenched his fists. So please let me save this boy. Don't make me stop being a hero. Nothing was said after that. All Might stood there looking at everyone with a pleading look. No one knew what to say. This was unprecedented. Having a high-ranking pro-hero threaten to quit. Especially over some random criminal. It's only worse because it was All Might. Of all people, why did it have to be the No.1 pro-hero? For those close to All Might, a few had no idea why he was doing this. But they knew him well enough to know he was dead serious. Why, you must be joking, All Might. The same smug government official from earlier muttered out. There's no possible way you would retire over something so trivial. That was all Toshinori Yagiaka All Might could handle. In the blink of an eye, All Might used his super speed to appear in front of the government official. Shocking and frightening many. The official looked like he was going to wet himself when All Might glared right down at him. Does it look like I'm joking? All Might asked with a cold and soft tone. This is anything but trivial. The official did the smart thing as he shook his head fearfully. When All Might took a look around the room, many didn't say a word. Nezu along with Naomasa were quietly smiling. All Might eventually turned towards Kenji Tsuragami, the chief of police. The one with the beagle head. Unlike most, he gave All Might a stern and calm stare. Technically the government could give Isuku to All Might. But it had to be approved by Kenji. Which meant he was the only one standing in All Might's way. "So, what's it going to be?" Kenji All Might sternly asked with his arms crossed. Kenji wasn't a fool. He, along with everyone in this room, knew what would happen if All Might abruptly retired. Anarchy, simple as that. Without the symbol of peace, villains and other criminals would come out of the shadows and raise hell. Law and order would mean nothing in a day or so. The public would be in panic and terrified. Riots would most likely happen. The heroes themselves would have a lot on their plate. Lives would be lost. Kenji was definitely in a bind. Finally, after a good minute of thinking it over, the chief decided what to do. "I must let you know that I am very against this. But it seems we are at your mercy." Kenji woofed out with a frown. "I'll approve of it. But there will have to be measures put in place." The smile finally appeared on All Might's face. Of course. Back to the present. And that's what happened. All Might was met with silence as he looked over at Isuku, who was speechless. The poor kid had a shocked expression on his face. It was a lot to process for him. Even with his quirk. So many questions were going through his mind. But he was only able to ask one. Why would you do that for someone like me?" A small smile graced All Might's face. "Young Midoriya, why did you save those people?" All Might asked. "You could have easily escaped in the chaos. Tell me, why did you do it?" Izuku was taken back by the question. He knew why he did it. But was he brave enough to say it? After everything he's done? Did he deserve to say such words? "You know what I think?" Our green-haired protagonist looked up to see All Might giving him his signature smile. His eyes were filled with pride. Surprising Izuku. "You did what I truly believe you are destined to become, young Midoriya," All Might began to say as he stood up. Suddenly All Might began to steam a little and then he grew in size. His baggy clothes now fit him perfectly. No longer was he a sickly and frail man. Now he was powerful and muscular. The way the number one pro hero should look. "You did what any hero would have done," All Might proclaimed with a large smile and boisterous tone. "That boy you saved along with all those innocent people didn't see you as a villain. Not even a vigilante. No, what they saw in that moment was a hero." Izuku was getting weak to his knees. Tears were soon visible coming down his face. He couldn't keep it in any longer. Here was his idol telling that he was a hero. Even after all he's done. It was too much for him to handle. Seeing the state Izuku was in, All Might decided to continue. "There are stories about every hero. How they became great. Their bodies move before they have a chance to think. Almost on their own. Thinking of others' welfare rather than their own. You risked everything to save those people and that boy. Even in the face of danger, you had a relieved smile on your face." More tears were seen flowing down Izuku's face. His chest was tightening, his head began to lower as he held his chest. After all he's been through. Most of his life he was considered quirkless. Treated like dirt or looked down by many. Even by his mom and former best friend. But that all changed when he discovered his quirk. Though it came with a heavy price. He did horrible things because of it. He'd hurt and frightened so many people. Kaken, many people who were innocent and some who were not. The very heroes he dreamed of meeting. Izuku didn't want to do those things but had no choice. The last few months he let go of his dream. Because it all seemed impossible. All that he's done, it was rightfully so. However, now it didn't seem so impossible. In fact, it was only at arm's length from him. For some reason, Izuku remembered something his mom said to him a long time ago. When he was told he was supposedly quirkless. "I'm sorry Izuku, I wish things were different." Those words weren't the ones he needed to hear back then. The thing he wanted. No, the words he needed to hear. "Izuku Midoriya, you too can become a hero." Izuku was now sobbing loudly. The words he needed to hear. Eventually Izuku looked up to see All Might extending his hand towards him. "Izuku, let me help you. And I promise you. You will become a hero." Time seemed to have slowed down for Izuku. Brief images of his life flashed before his eyes. Both good and bad. His mom, Kaken, his bullies, the people he's hurt and saved. And for a second he could have sworn he saw a man. A man who he didn't recognize. Who was looking down at him with a loving and proud smile. He didn't know why. But he felt like he knew this man on a personal level. He just couldn't figure out why. Now, all Izuku saw smiling was All Might. Who was waiting for his answer. "Well, what do you say?" At that moment Izuku made a choice that would not only change his life. But for those all around him. maybe even change the world itself. Izuku reached out and accepted All Might's hand. From then on, nothing would ever be the same. Meanwhile, in a shack somewhere in the States. In a small shack in the middle of a desert, paintings of many kinds were sprawled on the floor, walls, and even the ceiling. A man in a large coat was in the shadows painting something that was nearly finished. But that wasn't the strangest thing. What was is that many of the paintings present were eerily familiar. For example, one painting showed what looked to be a young Isuku being comforted by his mom. Another showed Isuku as the stalker being confronted by Eraserhead. One more event showed Isuku accepting All Might's hand, which only happened moments ago. All of this was strange and a bit confusing. It only got more strange when the paintings close to the man were shown. Two portraits were leaning against a wall near the man as he finished the current portrait he was painting. One showed what looked to be Izuku meeting an old Japanese man with a beautiful looking katana strapped behind his back. Izuku looked excited and was starstruck by the man, who was smiling as he shook Izuku's hand. The next one was something more different. This time it showed All Might fighting with what appeared to be a black and large muscular monster. But that wasn't the strangest thing. No, what was seen in the last and recent portrait was strange. It showed a bloodied and exhausted Izuku fighting a mystery person shrouded in the shadows. It looked like Izuku was on his last leg. What did it all mean? The man sat down on the dusty floor. His gaze was solely on the recent painting. He let out a deep sigh. It's happening all too fast. The man muttered out as he looked at the painting one more time. His attention went onto Izuku, causing the man to frown sadly. You have a long and difficult road ahead of you. My son. Thanks for watching my video and make sure to check out the author of this fanfic. Link is in the description. See you next time. Till then, sayonara.